Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Done. Redirecting to Facebook Live page. All right, we are live. We all hope so anyway.
Hi, Troy.
I am here with Neal Smith. Hello, Neal.
Hi, Troy.
How are you this evening?
Well, I would like to let people know that for anybody that expected this to start right at 8 o'clock, because I'm involved, things are running late.
Yes.
I take full responsibility, Troy. It's
all
not
right.
Troy's fault. It's not Troy's fault.
Fortunately, we're only a minute or two late.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Last time I did it, it was 8 minutes late. That
We'll
was
blame
me.
it
That
on
was all me. Blame it on the boss.
We'll blame it on Al Gore and the invention of the internet. Blame it on the boss.
No, no.
Now, see if you had your sack.
He never said that he invented the. He never said that. He was responsible
That's
for
true.
the legislation.
That's
okay.
true.
All right. Let's.
That's true. Yes. Yes. Let's get that right. Now back to blame it on the bossa nova.
Yes,
if
Connie
you had
Stevens,
your sax
Connie
and I had
Francis.
my guitar,
It was one of the Connies.
we could jump into that right now.
Blame it on the bossa nova. Who was that? It was It was Connie somebody.
Yeah, who did that?
Why is it that I don't really know? Even now, I know that Connie Francis did a really good twist album, but Connie Francis, Connie Stevens, I wouldn't be able to distinguish them in a lineup. Police lineup. I don't know, musically or like appearance wise. And why is that? I don't know. I need to get my Connies sorted out.
Yes, you do.
Someday.
A strange story for me was when I took my nieces to Chicago last year, and we were walking the streets on Michigan Avenue. When we got to a corner, there was a guy set up with a guitar and a little PA system.
Mm-hmm.
And of all things, he was playing Blame It on the Bossa Nova.
I wonder if that was a standard before whichever Connie it was got to it.
Yeah, it's strange.
Or I wonder if it was written for the Connie in question.
It wasn't what I was expecting to hear that day, let me tell you.
Nobody ever expects to hear Blame It on the Bossa
We
Nova.
digress, as always, Neal.
Oh, yeah, that's what we were designed to do. Digression.
Yeah. Now this would work for the other idea. We could go right into all the Connies.
What's the other idea?
Of just talking music for.
Oh, I thought it was the idea that had the name attached to it.
Oh no.
No. All right, we're not going there.
No, I wouldn't go to the Wednesday thing. No. The other idea of just picking a music topic and going for a half hour. Connie.
Yeah, and going somewhere else and never coming back, probably, the way I ramble on.
Yeah, exactly. But we're here today for a purpose or something.
I don't have one of those.
I'm here to ask you, Neal. You have been gracious with your time. And I'm going to ask you about how you got started in music. And maybe say through your teen years today. And if this goes well, maybe we can do another one next week and move on for 14 years. If Facebook doesn't shut us down or anything.
If it goes well. What are the chances of that?
Yeah, well, they're slim to none, as they always say. But...
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm going to start with a question here, Neal. Do you have any older relatives who played music?
My mom took piano lessons. I don't know that I ever heard her play anything.
Okay.
And my dad bought one of those. I'm sure you know about these. It was a generational thing. In the 60s and 70s, they had these organs, like a Lowry or a Hammond or something like that. and you could play you could play it with one finger. On the top console you'd play the melody, and on the bottom it would play a chord and a rhythm. Like it had a built-in drum machine. And my dad had one of those, and he kind of knew what to do with it, so he must have had some lessons too. I mean, this is like a once a year. He bought this thing and he would play it like once a year.
Okay.
I don't know that either of my parents really considered themselves musicians, though. I don't think so. And then before that, it skips a generation, and my mom's grandfather was a career musician in the U.S. Navy, and he was an orchestra. He played viola, and he was an orchestra leader in the U.S. Navy during World War I and World War II.
Interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, he had a long life. He died when I was 11. I never met the guy because he had dementia by the time I was born. And when he passed away, my uncle, one of my mom's brothers, salvaged the wind-up tabletop Victrola that he had, and that was given to me, and I still have it.
Nice.
Yeah, along with the cabinet that he made for this Victrola and every record that he ever bought with a handwritten list. So that's how musical he was, but I never met him, unfortunately.
Okay.
But
so you didn't necessarily musician. Grow up with parents or an uncle or aunt, someone doing gigs or anything that like inspired a young nervous Neal.
Nope.
Okay. Do you remember your earliest musical memory, or what do you have as an early musical memory, I should say? Of course, if you couldn't remember, it wouldn't be a memory. So
I think, I'm not sure if I have the chronology right on this, but I remember when it might have been preschool, maybe 4 years old. And I would go to a neighbor's house. And she had kids. She was married and she had kids. And I'm not really sure of the circumstances that made this necessary or possible, but I would go to Nellie McElhaney's house and I would sit and listen to, she would let me play records when I was 4 or 5. And, I knew what to do. I would listen to mid-19th century melodic classical music, not symphonies, but I would listen to like Schumann and who else? Dvorak, Humoresque by Dvorak, and things that had melodies that somebody that age could recognize and remember. In the Hall of the Mountain King, that was an Edvard Grieg. That was another one that I used to listen to a lot. And I was fascinated by that kind of classical music. I didn't really have a lot of exposure to pop music at that time. It wasn't a thing. We didn't listen to the radio. And so if it wasn't on TV, I wouldn't have heard it, but classical music, I really
that's interesting, because I was going to ask you, most 4 or 5 year olds are, back then, it's the Monkees or something going on. But if you weren't exposed to that, that's interesting that it went to the classical, that those records were there.
It seems weird in retrospect, but at the time, it's just, you don't know the difference.
It seems normal.
There was no radio on in the house. We wouldn't have watched anything, it's like, there's music on TV, we need to watch this concert. It was never anything like that. And as I remember it, my dad was usually the one that would control what was on TV. So it was Gunsmoke and probably Bonanza and things like that. The Wizard of Oz always. For as far as pop music goes, I think the first thing I remember is that there was a TV ad for Radio Free Europe. And Radio Free Europe was a radio service set up by the US government, I think, to broadcast into communist Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union at the time, to blast them with, our version of the news and our music and things like that, to try to upset the Eastern Bloc and the Soviets. And there was a TV commercial, and they played, as I remember this, they played 3 songs, and this might have been like 1968 or something, so I would have been 5. And the three songs that I remember in this radio or this TV commercial were Tequila. They just played a snippet of Tequila, Take Five, and For What It's Worth by Buffalo Springfield. And those songs always scared me because I associated them with communism.
Well,
I didn't understand, you know. I knew that, you know, I knew what
yeah.
Radio Free Europe. I think I must have asked my mom about it. It's like, what's Radio Free Europe? You know, can I listen to that? And she goes, well, here's what they do. And so you don't hear it here. You would hear it if you were, I'm sorry, in that part of the world. And so I always associated those three songs. I didn't even know what they were called. But when I first heard Tequila, I thought, that's that one song. And I thought it was spooky. And For What It's Worth is, I mean, that's a frightening song anyway. It's a protest song. And
Yeah.
and Take Five. I didn't hear Take Five until I was in college properly. I didn't know what it was. So that was my first real exposure to pop music in a TV commercial, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. The Champs were working for communism there.
They were working against communism.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it was Radio Free Europe, so that was our,
Yeah,
you know, our message being
my
sent
fault.
to the beyond the Iron Curtain. Yeah.
I was thinking that you were saying that it freaked you out because you thought it was promoting communism.
Well, I wouldn't have known the difference. Even if I knew it was supposedly the good guys broadcasting to supposedly the bad guys, it's still just that association with, you know, this music must be really edgy and underground and, you know, really adventurous. And I probably really shouldn't be listening to this. It's not meant for my ears kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the way I would have associated it.
That F to E flat chord has got all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's subversive.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are some childhood musical memories. Any others that you have as far as remembering seeing somebody play maybe, or in addition to the classical music you were listening to, the radio broadcasts there that you're speaking of? Were you seeing, did you ever get a chance to see anybody live at all as a youngster?
No, I grew up in a small town, so there wouldn't have been any place to go. We didn't travel a lot. It's not like we were going to Chicago or anything. And, you know, grew up on a farm and we kind of stayed there. If I had heard any live music, it would have been in church. And I do remember, and this was probably the late 60s too, maybe 68, 69. Our church brought in this young woman with long blonde hair, and she played guitar and she sang and she sold albums.
Oh.
And to me, that was a big deal. You know, if you're making an album, I just imagined, you know, if you're making an album, you've had several layers of success to be able to get to the point where you need to put something on vinyl. And I still remember a song that she sang. I mean, it stuck in my head and it never left. She sang it once. We didn't buy the album, so I would only have heard this song once. And I think she wrote it.
That's
but I
incredible.
don't know. Yeah, and it's still in my head. And I can imagine her sitting up there in church, you know, up there by the sanctuary with a guitar on the way folk singers would have done on a wooden bar stool. Maranatha, the king is coming soon. That's all I remember of it. But that was the hook. Yeah.
That's something, because it probably wasn't even a let's say a popular song necessarily, because it was her song.
Right.
Could that be true?
Probably. And I want to say that this might have been around the same time that those musicals were coming out, like Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar and things like that, which probably would have prompted the conservative church that I grew up in to bring somebody like a younger folk type singer. It's like, well, this seems to be catching on. Maybe this is how we can keep the interest of younger people, because I doubt that, you know, the older people in the church would have thought, it's like, well, yeah, why don't we bring this person in? It was pretty conservative. It was, you know, it was all hymnals and the organ, and, you know, the songs were always played too slowly for my liking. And so for them to bring somebody like that in, it seemed like it was a big deal to me. It was uncommon. You know, we didn't know who she was. She was from somewhere else. And it wasn't somebody within our church doing it. So that was a pretty early one too, I think.
That's incredible. You remember the song though, because like I remember being young and going to church and maybe hearing them sing "Oh Happy Day" or something like that.
Oh,
But it's
you had it made.
it's something I associated with the radio, So and you're hearing
that never would have been sung in our church. Never. No.
and you're hearing something that you never heard before or since, and yet 40, 50 years later, here you are still remembering it.
Well, it's possible that she performed the album cut, and maybe that's why that hook stayed in my head, because it's just like maybe she sang it 50 times. I don't know.
Or the 12-inch remix of version of it. The dance mix version of
it's the Jim Steinman disco remix of Maranatha, The King is Coming.
The 8-minute version.
Yeah. Could have been.
Wow. And did just speaking of that, just kind of going off your different road here, with the classical music that you were listening to, did you find that those melodies were sticking with you also?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you already had an ear already going, as a child, with remembering melodies and things like that. Possibly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I always wonder, like when I teach with my private students, I always wonder how much of that is innate and how much of it is learned, or how much of it is just because you want it.
Yeah.
Like if the only time I could go to the neighbor's house and listen to those songs that I really love to listen to, if I could only do that maybe once a week or once every other week, and I still wanted to hear that music, you see where I'm going with this? If I still wanted to hear that music like a couple days later, and I knew it was going to be another week or so, then I'd regenerate it in my head. So maybe it's just out of necessity. I don't want to give myself any, like, the whole concept of talent or being gifted or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not with me, at least.
Well, I'll say it of you rather than you say it of yourself. If there's anyone
don't. It's not a talent. I don't know. It took me so long to figure things out musically, especially how to work a saxophone. It just took so long for me to be passable at it. That if there's talent, I don't have it. It's an ability developed over time.
I know the feeling, Neal. I always felt like I was the worst player anytime I was around a group, and still to this day, anytime I'm around a group of people, I feel I'm the worst one.
Well, it's because your father is such a phenomenal technician on the guitar. That probably has a lot to do with it. Is he listening?
I'll see if I hear him scream from the other room. If I hear a loud amen, brother, or something like that from the other room.
And not only that, but the fact that he would regularly do gigs with such luminaries as Dave Navarro.
Yes.
He's listening, right?
Yeah, throw them all out. Throw all the name drops right now.
No, I like the way Dave plays trumpet, and he's got a good voice too.
Yeah.
That would be my guess, is that I just wanted to keep the music in my head, so it just kept regenerating in there, I guess.
Okay.
But
all right. Well,
thank you.
Let's get to
for
the
thinking well
question.
Of me anyway.
Well, that's how I think.
Yeah,
of
you're
you.
A good guy.
Well, at least with you.
Aw.
So how did you pick up the saxophone? Why was that?
Very, very carefully. I was afraid of dropping it.
Yeah.
So do you want me to show you?
What made you choose that instrument?
They said they set you up for this in 5th grade. You didn't go through a band program, did you?
We played the tonette like in 2nd grade.
Oh, okay. It's like this whole marketing thing. When you look at it in retrospect, and because I work for music stores now, it's like, oh, I get it now. But when you're a kid and if your parents aren't musicians, it's like, oh, I guess this is what we do. There's a procedure. So in 5th grade, I went to Princeton, Illinois, grade school. My entire first 18 years was in Princeton. And in 5th grade, they offered band as an elective. And they hyped it up for a couple months. It's like, in a couple months, there's going to, this man is going to come here from the Quad Cities, which is a place I'd never been to. and he's going to have you test out horns if you want to be in band, and you can play any instrument you want to. I thought, okay, I'll be playing the violin. And like a week, maybe 2 weeks before this guy comes to town to show his instruments and have kids test them, you take this test, and they play a note like beep, and then they'll play there'll be like a 5-second pause, then they'll play a second note, beep. Was that higher or lower? It's higher. I thought, this is stupid and this is easy. So naturally what happens is, like, your son scored 99 out of 100. He's really got to give. It's just marketing. Who can't tell? Well, I'm sure like most people got like 80, 90, 95% on that stupid test. And the ones who didn't probably just didn't care or didn't want to be in consideration for band. It's like, I'm not doing this. So, that's, your son got 99 out of 100. I think that was it. And it's like, I was all proud and everything. And then it's the day where you get to try the instruments. The man is here from Griggs, and he's in the audio video room, or whatever that room was called. And they called us one by one to go in there and try an instrument. So my name was called, and I went there. I was like, this is going to be so cool. I'm going to get to play a violin today. So I walk up. The guy goes, hello, young man. What would you, that kind of thing. It's like, I want to play the violin. And he said, I'm really sorry, but your school is not going to have an orchestra. Wouldn't you like to try another instrument? And my first thought was just like, they said we could play anything. And a violin is like, what other instruments are there? There's violin and some other crap that doesn't even matter. But the violin is, when you look at an orchestra, it's a violin. It's a violin playing that. I see violins on TV all the time, and you don't have one? I didn't say that. I was, taught to be polite and everything. It's like, he said, we don't have a violin. Your school's not going to have an orchestra. So I started walking out of the auditorium, and I got about halfway through, and he said, wouldn't you like to try another instrument? And just because it was an adult saying that, and because of, you're polite to adults and you don't say no. I turned around and I went back, try that one. I'm not even sure I knew what it was called, but I knew a friend of my mom's had one that wasn't being used. Her daughter had played for a while and, gave it up. So I thought, maybe my parents will go for it if we have one, have access to one that's not being used. So I'll do that, I guess. Stupid brass thing. And that's the last I remember about any disappointment related to that process at all, because as soon as the horn came in from Griggs, it was, you open the case and there's this smell and everything and velvet and it's shiny, everything. I thought, whoa, this is awesome. Yeah. And that there's no turning back. And I didn't really think about the violin again for quite a few years. And I got when my great grandfather passed away, he had a violin. He was a viola player, but he had a violin too. And that was given to me. So, and I took lessons for a few years. I was never really that good at it. Yay.
Okay. The sax, did you take formal lessons, or did you self-taught?
They give you a book and you have group lessons in 5th grade. So I had a lesson there was a trumpet player, Debbie Larson, played trumpet or cornet probably. And there was another musician too, and I'm not sure who that was. The three students, and we had a group lesson, and we, you're given the book and it's circled and it says read the instructions and do what you're told. But the band director, the 5th grade band director, was a trumpet player, and I never heard him play. But he would tell us what to do, and he was a Marine guy, and you did not mess around with that guy. So you show up to your lesson the next week and you'd better have it figured out. Okay. And he never yelled at me, but there was always that, it was that quiet, it's like, do not disappoint me, that kind of thing. He never had to raise his voice. So I was always prepared, but I was taught how to form my embouchure. You put your bottom lip over your bottom teeth and that kind of thing, and how to put the reed on. And that was about it. Where to put your fingers. And that was about it. That was the first lesson. And then it was just going through the book. And when I was in 6th grade, I was bumped up to the 7th grade band because they needed tenor saxophone players, evidently. So I was bumped up. And so that was the end of those group lessons either. And it was never again. So you figure things out when you have a band director that is a former Marine. You figure things out. There were he had these like mobiles in the band room, the junior high school band room. And there were these 3-sided signs. And one of them said results, not excuses. And another one of them said, the difficult we do today, the impossible ... takes a little longer. And so it was just kind of understood as like, oh, okay, all right. This is how things go. He's a good band director though. Yeah. So
how long do you think it took before you developed a love for the saxophone or music? I mean, was it instantaneous or, was it over time?
There was that really brief period, maybe a couple weeks, where I was disappointed because it wasn't going to be a violin. And then as soon as they brought the instruments to the school and you open it up and, parents are signing the paperwork to pay for the, to make the payments on the thing, it's just like, this is cool. And I don't remember there ever being a time when it's like, this is a really cool thing to be able to do. I think if I ever had any doubts about it, the only time that I didn't enjoy playing the horn was marching band. And it was partly because, it just seemed like the least musical thing you could do with a musical instrument. And the other thing that I didn't like was that we were giving free entertainment. I thought even early on, junior high school marching band was fine because we just did parades. But by the time we were, marching for football games and giving free entertainment to the football team, these are like kids that were routinely like, push me around and try to make me cry and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Sport. I thought it was like, I'm providing free entertainment for these guys. And, they would charge admission for the football games, and none of that went to the band to maintain the uniforms or instruments or anything like that. And I always thought that was unfair. Plus I didn't like, the music is just loud. There's no subtlety or nuance to it at all. It's just like blast, so you can be heard for a mile. I never enjoyed marching band. To this day, I really sympathize with students that have to go through it. Some of my students enjoy it. But for the ones that want to opt out of it, it's like, yeah, you got my support. If your band director wants to talk to me about it, tell them it was my decision. If you, don't want the flack for it. So I get it. I don't like marching band. Sorry, marching band. I don't want to offend any marching band, but everybody's got their own thing. I like disco and a lot of people hate it. So I'm not advocating against marching band. A lot of people find a lot of value in that and get a lot out of it. And I would never disparage that. Anybody who gets a lot out of it, yeah, go for it. It's not me. It's just not me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that wasn't the route for you, I guess, then.
No, not in the marching thing. If I had been able to opt out of it, I gladly would. I wanted to be in high school band only because of jazz band. I wasn't interested in anything. Concert band was okay, but I just didn't find a lot of, it didn't move me, I guess. Marching band, certainly. It's just like, oh man, and you have to, 2 weeks of being out in the sun and everything, learning the drills and everything before school even starts. It's like, no, I did it. I did it so I could be in jazz band. That was it.
Okay.
At the high school level.
What's interesting, I found from, and I'm sure this also from years of playing with different musicians, that story is kind of the same as far as when the instrument gets in your hand or whatever, when you first start, it's like your world changes in some way. Well, I don't even know if it's your world changes, but it's not like you really think negative about that instrument, as an instructor, you come across a lot of students, because you do so many, there's many that love it, but then there's many who maybe they only last a month or whatever. Mm-hmm. And they find out, that that's not for them.
Yeah. And that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting how the guys that are out there still playing, at age 40, 50, whatever, they all had that similar story of when they were kids or whatever teenager, when they first started playing, that there was something there that, was exciting about it. And it's been retained all these years later.
Yeah. I wonder if that's what it's like to be a parent.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, it can't possibly
know.
be the same because, an instrument isn't a living thing
Yeah.
that you have to nurture. It's just, it's something that's manufactured, but it's probably about as close as I'll get.
Yeah.
To opening that case and it's like, wow, this gets to be part of my life now. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
what can this become?
Or when you start playing something that you enjoy playing, a certain song or something, and you're like, wow, I can actually do that.
Yeah, there's hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have any school band stories? Like, did you play, obviously you had the junior high and the high school, so I know you were in band, you were just mentioning that. Any fun stories that you had or fun times?
I've got one that I wouldn't mind getting out of the way, but it wasn't a fun story.
Okay.
I think I might have been a sophomore in high school, and the band was having a Christmas party in the band room, and it's like this is as close as I got to having like people my own age being as like, you know what, Neal's a cool guy, he's one of us. That was about as close as I could get, was being in the band room, like a safety zone, because anywhere else you don't know what's going to happen. And I was a B student, but there was always a chance for ridicule or somebody trying to put you down or trip you in the hallway and watch your books scatter and see if they can make you cry. Things like this stupid. So I'm in the band room, and this group of upperclassmen is going to do a skit. It's going to be the 12 days of the band room, something stupid, something that the kids came up with. And if I had a musical nemesis, it was this guy. I'm not going to mention his name. He was 2 years older than me, good looking guy, and he went to the Pentecostal church. So that was kind of, we went to the Wesleyan church, and the Pentecostal weren't really, there was enough of a difference there that we weren't, there was a division there, and it's like, we're not sure about you guys. They were going to say, yeah, we're not sure about you either.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of thing. And good looking guy, and he was a pretty good player too, and he was the lead alto player in jazz band at the time. And so he was the first day of Christmas. So they're going to do 12 days, and it would always come back to him to do the last one. And he was wearing a band uniform that was too big, and his hair was greasy, and I don't remember what else. And he had like tons of like medals, like these little medals that we would get for doing certain things, just like 20 of them on one side of his band uniform. And it was pretty clear to me pretty early on that was supposed to be me. And when it came back to the first day of Christmas, my band director gave to me, and he goes, "A chest to pin my medals on." And everybody laughed. And I just thought, not even here can I just thought, so, but when something like that happens at that age, I mean, you have a couple of choices. You can either let that get to you, and it's like, I don't belong anywhere, and go home and cry, which I did anyway. But it's like, okay, I got to work twice as hard. So that's the end of that. When you grow up on a farm and there's only 3 channels on TV, no internet, none of that kind of stuff. And you can go in the barn and shovel horse manure, or you can practice your horn and say, oh, okay. So I just played all the time. What are the options?
Yeah. What did you practice in the barn?
Yeah.
Did you?
Not all the time. I mean, when the weather was good, it was usually outside. My dad did shift work, and I didn't always know what his shift was. Sometimes he'd work like midnight I don't even know, but he did shift work in the factory, and I wasn't always aware when he was home or when he was sleeping. So, the noise doesn't belong in the house. That it was that kind of thing. And when the weather was, if it was raining or cold or something like that, you know, so the barn was always a decent place because nobody would hear me there. But we had acreage too, so I could go down to we had a ravine with a creek at the bottom, and I'd sit on a rock there, and you know, the horses liked it. We had horses, and they weren't spooked by it. They would often follow me if I was out in the acreage. They'd follow me around while I was
Oh,
playing. Yeah, I try to
nice.
relocate to get away from them, and they'd follow me. Yeah.
So what drew you to, you mentioned that you wanted to be in jazz band in high school. What made you want to go that route? Or was that just like a more difficult music or something for you that
No,
was
it's fun.
okay?
And unlike you've heard high school concert bands. I'm
Yes.
and I liked classical music, but you know, it wasn't symphonic. It was high school concert band music is different than symphonic music. It didn't reach me the same way that like a Tchaikovsky symphony would or something like that. And I know there's a lot of good literature written for concert bands, but at that time it what I didn't understand how to get excited about that. And I didn't
Mm.
understand the nuances. And I'm not sure that our high school band, I don't think was as good as our junior high school band. Um, it was just a different aesthetic. And the high school jazz band had come to the junior high school as a recruiting tool for the band program when I was in 8th grade. And I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. There's energy and excitement, and there's a drummer playing a kit. I wasn't drawn to jazz necessarily, but the high school jazz band that I was a part of was more of a like a rock band. um, I remember one year when we went to contest, one of the songs we did the theme to Laverne and Shirley. I'm not kidding, Troy. Da, da,
I
da, da,
believe it.
da, 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 da. It was straight eights, and we did a Saturday Night Fever medley.
Great.
Yes, yes. So
My
it was kind of a rock. It was like the concert band version of a rock band. We didn't necessarily do a lot of jazz.
hmm
Yeah, but
when I was
that's
in high school, our jazz band that I was in playing guitar, we did maybe one or two Sammy Nestico charts
yep.
and maybe a couple standards, you know, Satin Doll or something. But the other ones that I clearly remember was the theme from Taxi,
Wow.
Hill Street Blues
Yeah.
theme, and TSOP, The Sound of Philadelphia.
Who was that Mally Williams? Where did you go to
Mally
school?
Williams, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I just bought one of his albums.
Did you really?
You think I'm lying, don't you? You want me
No,
to,
I know. I know
it's
you
right
wouldn't
over
lie to me.
here.
I know you would lie. I didn't know he had any albums.
Oh, am I still plugged in?
I hear you.
I can hear you too. I got it right here, Troy.
Oh, okay. I thought
that
you meant like a
backwards?
solo album.
Mally
Okay.
Williams.
Yes.
There it is.
Nice.
1964.
Is that a Fredlo recording?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
How did you know?
I thought you were meaning like Mally as a, you know, Mally and his quartet, you know, in the sweet tones or something. Or
Oh, you know, I bet he's got some.
he might. Yeah.
Yep. Manny would know.
Yeah, that's true. So did you do any gigs, you know, in high school outside of school band? Did you start gigging yet? Was there any gigs in Princeton or the area around there?
Not in Princeton, but I became a member of the Depew Municipal Band. Depew is I'm trying to, like, the farm that I grew up on was located kind of, I think it was probably closer to Princeton, but it was about the same distance to Depew. Depew is a village, and Princeton is a town. Princeton didn't have a municipal band until I think it was my last 2 years of high school. Maybe Princeton had it, some kind of a municipal band. I don't think we ever played though. We rehearsed. I don't remember us ever doing a
Okay.
gig. But the Depew Municipal Band was a thing. There's a lake in Depew, and it's got this beautiful park by the lake, and they had a band shell there. And the Depew Municipal Band, they would have an ice cream social every week, I think, during the summer. I don't remember what day of the week it was. And the weird thing about that was, in order to be in that band, you had to be in the musicians union. So I joined the musicians union so that I could get paid $9.25 per gig or something like that. I don't remember what it was. I think it was a $10 gig, and then they took taxes out. So I did that. I think I did that through my freshman year, and then I gave up on it because, I wanted to focus on, I thought the jazz band stuff was cooler. There were a couple of times when, like, some of the neighbors, like, there was a younger neighbor who took up the trumpet, and there was another one who played trombone. And we would do get together some arrangements or band parts or something like that and figure out what would work. And we would play at retirement homes, nursing homes, and things like
Oh, okay.
that. There were a couple times I played at church that usually didn't go too well because I wanted to do up-tempo, spirited music with some energy to it, and it usually wasn't well received. There was one time I tried to do something with the organist, and he was pretty square. He was a good guy, but he was pretty square. We're going to do Amen, which is with the impressions, right?
Yeah.
Da, 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 and this guy couldn't swing to save his life. And I had him listen to the recording and everything. I was going to do the Boots Randolph version of it. And he was going boom, 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 boom. It was just really square. And I was like, how am I supposed to work with this? Anyway, it wasn't very well received. And I kind of heard through the grapevine. I was like, some of the elders in the church aren't really crazy about it. So the next thing I did, I'd started playing the violin by this point. And the next thing I did when they asked me to play again, it's like, could you tone it down? I brought in my great grandfather's tabletop Victrola, and I played along with a 78 on violin. I don't think anybody realized it. Yeah, they did, but I was being sarcastic about it. It's like, okay. I got your tame old music here. Yeah, they adored that. So I thought, okay, maybe I can be done with this.
That poor guy that couldn't swing. That's too bad. I remember Branford Marcellus reading a quote that he said, Ringo couldn't swing if he was hanging from a tree.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Poor Ringo, who just turned 80 a couple days ago.
Yeah, he did. He looks great.
Yes, yes.
Is he swinging? No, wait. Get by with a little help from my friends. That swung. Who's playing drums on that?
That was him.
That wasn't one of the ones where Paul took over?
I don't think so. I think we don't want to ruin it for some young Beatle fan now.
Oh, sorry. No, everything. It was all Ringo. It was all Ringo. Yeah.
Just like some of those guitar solos.
Yeah. He could swing.
Yeah, I think
he wasn't.
I think Branford was just doing something, saying something.
I get it. I mean, it's no Charlie Watts, but
yeah,
that guy can swing.
Yes,
he's got a big band, doesn't he? Or had a big band?
He did. Yeah, he did at one point. Yeah. So when did pop music come into your life, or at what point did that come?
I've thought about that, and this should have been something that stuck on my mind, like getting the saxophone. It should have been that pivotal of a moment. And I had to go back and kind of reconstruct it. Like when you and I would talk about pop music, and I started to notice that kind of I wasn't aware of pop music that was being played on the radio until about March of 1972.
Okay.
And I started thinking, it's like, well, wait a minute. I had a birthday that month. So I'm pretty sure what happened was, for some reason, it was probably somebody I knew at school had a radio, and I thought I should get one of those. And back in the 70s, radios looked cool. Panasonic made one that was like a ball, like a big plastic ball with dials on it and everything, and a built-in speaker, and it had a chain, and you could get them in like green and red and blue. They were really cool looking. There was another one that had an 8-track cassette cartridge player, and it looked like a TNT detonator. That's how you change the channels on the tape. So they were, these companies were doing these different things with marketing radios, and I thought, this is cool. I want something like that. So I think what happened was I saved up my money from my 9th birthday, and I bought a radio, and the radio I had was purple, and it had like this fake leather around it, but it was kind of like a light purple. And pretty quickly I found 2 radio stations that I really liked. If one wasn't playing a song that I wanted to listen to, the other one would be. And there were 2 Chicago stations, WLS and WCFL, and they both played top 40 pop music. And that was the end of that. I didn't listen to anything else. Yeah. I didn't go back to classical music, and I have really clear memories of me just trying to find a place to be alone and just listening to the radio for hours. And I knew those songs. I mean, I could write out the arrangements. They stick in, they stick in your head, and you could, like, the violin part goes like this, and then, the lower strings come in here, and then this happens, and, they messed up this word.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, like, in high school, were you able to already figure out the melody to the songs that, say, some of the songs on the radio?
Yeah, that was an accident. I was a little bit worried when like in junior high school. I was never told this, but I came to understand in my own mind, created this, it's like the only things that you should practice are the things that will benefit the band. I wasn't told that, but I just thought, well, that's what you do. If you want to be a good musician, you support the band, and you work on band, you practice band music, you practice out of the book. And those are the things, because anything else, if you're having fun, you're doing it wrong. Just kind of the church thing. And I started goofing off on the horn, and I would one of the first things I did was I would play duets with myself. Like, I'd record one part on a cassette tape recorder, and I'd play along with that. And I thought, this is cool. And I got bored with that. So then I started trying to play along with the Boots Randolph record, and I would get a note right, and it's like, whoa, I played the same note as Boots Randolph, that kind of thing. And I get 2 notes in a row. It's like, whoa. And then, you just keep building on that. And, there's no print music. You're just trying to match notes. And clearly, the more you do that, the better it gets. And so by the time I'm like 15 or 16, I remember being in the band room and being in where they stored the instruments. And I heard somebody in the next room play a note on the piano. I said, that's an A. And whoever else was in there's like, yeah, right. And I said, no, it's an A. And I'm pretty sure about that. And then they went out to the piano and played an A. And it's like, whoa, how'd you do that? And then I got the reputation for that. It's because I was probably the only person in the band room that was practicing that way. So I developed that ability to be able to listen to somebody. You do that often enough. If you have a thought in your head, you can express that thought in English, which is kind of a miracle. How does that happen? So you have a musical thought in your head, you play it on the horn. It's no different. It's the same process. It's a different language.
Yeah.
But people who aren't musicians think it's like, yeah, there's this guy, you can listen to a song, you can play it. Doesn't have anything written down. It's like, oh, okay. You can have a conversation without having a script in front of you. That's amazing. It's the same thing. But don't tell anybody that.
So do you remember who some of your favorite artists were? No, I won't.
This isn't going public. And this is just between the 2 of us, right?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good.
Nobody else will see this.
Check your settings, Troy. What?
Yes.
My favorite what? From who? From when? What?
Any artists or songs from your high school years? Let's go pop music or if jazz had
pop music. Pop, talking about pop music. Chris Castle's listening. She's probably singing along a radio video.
Boogie with the Suitcase.
You're living in a disco.
Living in a rat race.
Forget about the rat, Troy.
Oh, that's right.
Forget about the rat race.
79. Yeah. Oh man, Robin Scott would be disappointed in me.
At least you know his real name. There's too many to list, really.
Because somehow Boots Randolph came into your life because you were figuring out his tunes.
Yeah. The same neighbor that would allow me that would let me play records at her house. Her name is Nellie McElhaney. Her husband was I think he was a real estate agent, and he was biking buddies with my dad. And he gave me a Boots Randolph album, and it was signed by Boots Randolph, which, of course, blew my mind.
Yeah.
And this guy that my dad knows met some guy who made a record, and he plays the saxophone. So, of course, that was huge. The album was Country Boots. It was all kind of, it's like Jambalaya was on there, and not Cotton Eye Joe. What is that? Wabash Cannonball was on there, Tennessee Waltz. So I learned all those. I know that entire album. I know every riff that he played. So that's how I learned about Boots Randolph, because I remember that guy. He came to the house. He was a little, he was kind of like, he was always tongue in cheek. Is like, "You're a saxophone player. Ever heard of a guy named Boots?" "No, old man. Boots Randolph. You ever heard of Boots Randolph?" And then he told me the story, and it's like he needed a dressing room, and I had this property next to this club where he was playing, and so he used my property as a dressing room, and he's famous, and he made an album. Like, oh, he must be good. It's like 10 or something, and he gave me the album, and the cellophane had been torn away from where he signed it, but other than that, it was still sealed. It's like, best of luck, Boots Randolph, or something like that. And I thought, wow, I didn't even know. I mean, because I'd heard Pick Up the Pieces and things like that. I mean, I'd heard those songs, but it didn't click to me that, people make a living playing the saxophone. So I thought Boots Randolph, I thought he's the one. He's the guy that makes a living playing the saxophone. How many people can do that? Well, Boots does it. I didn't know about anybody else. So I memorized that album. I liked listening to it. And yeah, so he was the first. But in terms of, like you said, music that I listened to in high school.
Yeah. Like
that was,
let's say a young Neal Smith driving around Princeton and Depew. If there was something you were able to play on your own that wasn't on, I don't know if you had a cassette player, 8-track player in the car or something, or
I had a 1972 Mustang that was pretty badly rusted out, and it had an 8-track player in it. And I had Hits by Boz Scaggs. That was a good one.
Oh.
That guy's amazing.
Yes.
That music really holds up well. I probably had a Maynard Ferguson one, because that's what all the band kids listened to. He was a showboat trumpet player. He was always hitting high notes that only dogs could hear. He had a disco. He had a disco album called New Vintage, and he was a legit jazz guy. He used to play with Stan Kenton, and he was a pretty well-regarded jazz player. But when he signed to Columbia Records and started doing solo stuff, he got kind of commercial. And he had this album called New Vintage, and it had a disco version of the Star Wars theme. It had I'm not kidding, a disco version of Maria from West Side Story. And I learned all these too. I couldn't do the saxophone solos because they were a little bit more complicated than Boots. A disco version of Scheherazade by Rimsky-Korsakov. Just bizarre. So I don't remember what other 8-track tapes I would have had. I remember those two, but I don't remember anything else for what I had.
So it was becoming a regular thing for you to learn the melodies to whatever music you were able to get your hands on, as much as you could at that age.
Yeah, but it wasn't an effort. I mean, it's kind of like somebody telling you a joke. You remember it and you can tell it to somebody else. If I heard a song, I knew how to play it. And again, I mean, it sounds like one of those things that's like, wow, what a gift. I mean, you get it because you do it all the time too. You listen to something, you play it. It's just, if you play by ear all the time, it's not a big deal. You just do it. And I knew like at a certain point, like by the time I was probably 16 or so, I knew that if I heard it, if I could hear it in my head, I knew I could play it. And it's not arrogant. And I didn't think of myself as being talented. It's just like, well, I do this all the time. So I've developed this
Right.
ability. I,
Yeah.
you know, never flaunted it or anything. In
Yeah,
fact,
that is the, go ahead.
I don't think I ever like went around the band or like I know some of my students do this. They'll go around play Careless Whisper and all that kind of stuff, and they think it's cool, and they're just yeah. I I, I never did that because my status in the school was not the kind of person that does that. You keep quiet or else you're going to get either in trouble or laughed at or something. I didn't take that risk. The only time that I really played, I didn't even really warm up unless everybody else was playing and I knew I couldn't be heard. The only time I really played was when there was a solo and jazz band and I'd have to stand up and I'd get like cold sweats and shakes and everything. And I would stare down. I was terrified that somebody would be looking at me and judging me. But you stand up and you do a solo and when it's done, it's like, oh my God. Like I wanted to do it. I really wanted to do it, but it was torture.
Yeah.
Being stand up and that there's a risk.
Yes.
Yeah. But at home,
Definitely.
when I was at home and I had access to a radio and I could, I knew nobody was listening, nobody was around, man, it was like flying. Why can't I do this at school? Well, pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, I always found it interesting because like you said, when you're young, a young musician and you're playing music and you do figure things out by ear, you don't think it's such a big deal, but there are other people that don't do it that think it's a big deal. So I guess it is in that sense because they're not able to, but you probably look at it like I do, like I can't do a thing with fixing a car. And so I'm more impressed by somebody that can open a hood and know what to do more than someone that could figure out a 3-chord song, because I'm like, how do you know how to open up that hood and know what to do with it?
Or throwing a
that
football.
Impresses me. Yeah, that impresses me more than, someone that can play chords to 4 songs just because I can't do it.
Yeah. But I think especially when it comes to the arts and probably to athletics and things like that, the people who put their focus in it and do all the work in the background and get the results are viewed as talented and gifted by the people who haven't developed that ability.
Yeah.
But I honestly think if it all relied on talent and being gifted, that shouldn't be me, because I don't think I'm either. But I'm persistent and I wanted to do it, so I got the result just because of that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let go of it.
Yeah, I like one time you were telling me that in the gifting part, if there is a gifting, that part of that gifting is just the perseverance of
wanting to do it bad enough to go through all the crap that you have to get the result. That's the gift.
Yeah. Because I've told that to people.
Yeah.
When someone talks about practicing or whatever, like, I've taught students before, home lessons, and the parents ask me about how often they should practice or whatever. And, my response was always, you shouldn't have to tell them. They ought to want to. They'll want to at some point. They don't have to do it every day, but there should be some desire to want to practice or learn the instrument. And I found, at least from my own opinion, is like you said, if they were gifted, then the desire to practice came along with that in some sense. It's like it all comes to, it's all rolled into one. All those things are in there. And some people practice 8 hours a day and some maybe one hour a day, there's different levels there for that, but to take it from point A to point B, there has to be something in there of a desire. And I don't know, like you said, a perseverance or whatever.
I don't think anybody ever told me to practice. I don't think anybody like, I don't think anybody at home would have told me, it's like, Neal, practice your horn. You
Yeah.
know, my parents wouldn't have asked me. It's like, get out your horn and practice. Um, it's possible that I might have, well, I was probably told not to, or if you're going to play that thing, you know, take it outside, your dad's sleeping, you know, that kind of thing, probably. But I was never told. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I noticed I haven't heard you play for a couple days. Get out your horn. No, nobody ever said that. I don't think they would have had to. But I probably played more than people wanted me to. It was probably irritating, especially early on when I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want
Yeah.
to
When
do
I look
that.
back at my life, or when I look at yours, or, you know, other friends of ours that we know, like, I can't brag about practicing because I think it all comes in the package. So if somebody, you know, if I knew somebody that's not practicing, I don't think I'm better than them
Oh, right.
because
Yeah.
I practiced or whatever. It's just that that thing was there, you know, or whatever it was, you know,
Mhm.
gifting, non-gift, whatever you want to call it, that was there. So it was like, it was, yeah, this is what I do. This is what comes with it, you know, or whatever. And like you said, it wasn't necessarily that someone had to tell me, but I never looked at it like, well, so-and-so doesn't practice or whatever, and made my, you know, put myself here and them here. I didn't see it that way. I just saw it like, for some reason, I enjoy playing this thing. even
Yeah.
even if no one else wants to hear it, I still enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, the other 8-track that I had was Chuck Mangione's "Feel So Good,"
Oh, that's a classic album.
and you know, I really like the way Chris Vidala plays it. Chris Vidala was the tenor sax player on that, and on the radio cut, you don't hear his entire solo. It got edited for radio, but on the album, he he cuts loose. He's a good player, and
Yeah.
I couldn't keep up with him. There was no way to slow it down, so I couldn't learn it. But a lot of the tricks that I still use, I learned from listening to his solos.
Cool. And if I
Yeah.
had known that, Neal, you know, I could name drop now and say, well, I did do, you know, I played with Chris Vadala, as you
I know,
know.
because it was Blackhawk. Thanks, Edgar. Yeah. Yeah, I knew
So
that
if
he
I
had
had
been
known
here.
that, if I had known that back then, you know, I could have, man, Neal, Chris Vadala's here.
Do you remember when the gambling boats first came to Davenport, right?
Yep.
1991.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this investor, John Connolly. He had been the governor of Texas.
Yeah.
Or I think he was in the car with Kennedy during, you know, in November 1963. Um, and he thought the gambling in Davenport was going to be a huge thing. So he started investing in properties in downtown Davenport. And he had the Capitol Theater in downtown Davenport renovated, and he had 2 shows a day going on there. Do you remember this?
Yes.
So they were kind of like
Yes, I
Branson
do.
type of acts. So it was Roy Clark would come in and do 2 shows a day for a week, and the Hager brothers, and trying to remember who else. Probably Buck Owens, probably, maybe,
Yeah.
but people like that. And Boots, he brought Boots Randolph in for a week, and I was playing on the boat at the time, but I had some time off to go see him, and it was like a Tuesday afternoon show or something like that, and there were probably 12 people in the audience, and he put on a really, really good show. And I got to meet him because he said afterwards he'd be signing autographs and things like that if you wanted to talk to him in the lobby. So I did. You know, I waited my turn and everything, and I asked him about Yakety Sax, and I asked him if he had heard, and I should have, you know, I think I knew. I asked him if he'd heard of the song Yakety Yak by the Coasters and that solo that King Curtis did. And, you know, my thinking at the time was, it's like King Curtis invented that style of music and you took it and ran with it and built a career out of it. And just, so, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking it's like social justice, you know, I know your secret. And I didn't know how he was going to react. And I asked him that. And, you know, he had every right to, you know, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about, punk. And he said, I owe my entire career to that man, and I never got a chance to thank him. I thought that was the coolest thing he could have said.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, because Yakety Yak with the Coasters was, I think, 1957. And King Curtis invented that really staccato, it sounded like a chicken. That kind of playing,
Mhm.
nobody had played like that before. And then yakety sax. I mean, he paid tribute to it in the title. It's pretty obvious what the source was, the inspiration for the song. But yakety sax was huge. Um, and it wasn't a sideman playing with a vocal quartet. I bet King Curtis probably got paid for the session and then, like, here's $50, have a nice dinner.
Right.
But Boots Randolph, got royalties because he wrote it, and that generated income for him probably throughout his life. And I thought that was a really cool thing for him to say.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only time I met him, and that's the only time I got to talk to him. But
Cool.
yeah.
Well, I'll finish up here, Neal, with any musical heroes during those formative years.
I know it's not the cool thing to say, but Boots Randolph, because it was the only person I knew about.
Yeah.
They're just odd ones, because you grew up in a small town and you've got the radio, and then you've got a department store that sells a few records, and that's what you have access to. And there's no way I could have known about the kind of jazz that was going on, even if I had wanted to. I didn't have access to it.
Right.
If it was on the radio, I didn't know about it, and you certainly couldn't find the records at Hornsby's, at the department store. So most of what I know about the saxophone was through pop music. And I kind of became fixated on this saxophone player named Phil Kenzie, who played on Al Stewart's Year of the Cat album. And the song Year of the Cat, the album cut, has a really nice extended saxophone solo in it. And the same guy also played on Time Passages by Al Stewart. So I memorized those solos too. And I always thought that guy, Al Stewart, is not a very emotional singer. He writes a lot about history, Nostradamus, and the world wars, and ancient battles and things like that. He writes songs about things like that. It's like if a librarian could become a pop star, it would be Al Stewart. But the saxophone player that he got, playing on Time Passages, this guy just sounded like he was soaring. He played alto, and I tried to do it on tenor. I'd have to take it down an octave, but I really liked the way that guy played. So him, Chris Vidala. I mean, I knew him. I liked his playing well enough to look up his name in Boots. And then when I got to college, everything changed, of course, because when you get to college, they tell you everything you've learned in your past is wrong, and they hit the reset button. And everything I discovered in college about the music that I like and still listen to now was completely by accident. I was in the University Jazz Band at Illinois State, and I was always second chair. I was lucky that I placed in the jazz band at all, because that meant I didn't have to do marching band or anything else. I could just focus on jazz band, which was cool. But I felt like I was hanging on a thread, and there was always somebody trying to unseat me. And when I was a freshman, I was second tenor, and the lead tenor player was this guy that he had a goatee. This is in 1981, and nobody had those. He wore his hair in a ponytail. He was kind of a hippie looking dude, and he had a leather gig bag. He was really cool. He was a senior, and he studied Coltrane. He wanted to play like Coltrane. And I don't remember where I was going with this. Oh, so he's always playing patterns like in all 12 keys. He was one of those players, a pattern player. And we were doing something in jazz band. We were doing this really cool shuffle, like doing that kind of a thing. And this tenor player stands up to take us all the way. He's like, and the jazz band director cuts it off. He's going like, man, you got to feel it, man. You said you got it all wrong. You're playing all these Coltrane patterns, man. It's like, I need you to sound like, I need you to sound like King Curtis or one of those guys. I thought, I need to remember that name. As soon as that jazz band rehearsal was done with, I went to the record store on campus, went to Apple Tree Records, and I looked for King Curtis, and they had a King Curtis album, and I bought it. And nothing was the same after that.
Nice.
I just thought, that's what I want to do. It's not jazz. It's this guy. That's what I want to sound like. When you play the saxophone, you're given the impression pretty early on that's like, you can study classical saxophone, which is a discipline, or you can study jazz, which is the opposite discipline of structure and a discipline of freedom. All that stuff in between, that doesn't really count. Boots Randolph, the King, that stuff. Those guys are having fun and they're probably making some money, but the serious musicians are going to one of these polar opposites. You choose one of those. I guess it's going to be jazz then. But the truth was, it was all of the stuff in the middle that I really, really liked, and especially the rhythm and blues players after World War II. Man, those guys had something to say.
Yeah.
Man. Yep.
And did you, I mean, we can go on this another time if this, if Facebook hasn't shut us down already.
Oh, they have.
But I'm wondering now that once you discovered that in college, which we can get into later, is then that opens a whole new thing for you of discovery.
Yeah.
Is that what ended up happening, now?
Yeah. And it was weird back then because you'd have to go to a record store and buy the record and wonder if it was going to be any good. I made a lot of
Yes.
mistakes. I bought a lot of bad albums or albums that didn't resonate with me. It's like, that's not what I hoped it would be.
Yeah. Those were the days, weren't they?
Man, I wasted a lot of money on albums that I didn't need. But yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't have a used record store there.
I found one eventually. I probably shouldn't have gone in there. It was a head shop, and these guys were selling. It's college town. They were selling rolling papers and Indonesian clove cigarettes and incense and glass paraphernalia that I didn't understand. But they also had used records. But the used records was kind of like, we're trying to make it look like we're legitimate. I think that's what was going on. And all of the people running it were old hippies and everything. It's like, hey man, cool album. You have some good taste inside, man. There's still a lot of old hippies at Illinois State in the 80s, early 80s. Everybody talked like that. It seemed like everybody talked like that. And I was like, okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. As you rushed out of there.
I need to get home.
Wash your clothes from the smell.
It smelled like clove cigarettes.
Yeah.
I got a story about clove cigarettes too that I'll tell you next time.
Right.
If there is a next time.
Yeah.
You're going to go back over this and it's like, oh man, what was I thinking when I asked him to do this?
Well, hopefully there's still some people out there watching us or watching you or watching me.
And Chris Castle, Troy.
Yes. Yeah, well, dynamic trio.
Hi, Chris. I know she's probably not watching, but she's
probably gone to bed by now.
She takes my breath away.
She's probably.
And I don't know what to say. Yeah, okay. She's heard enough of that.
She's getting ready for a new day.
Is that what she's doing?
I don't know. I think so.
Somebody's going to have to interview you one of these days, Troy. When's that going to happen?
That would be fun. Maybe I'll make it you, Neal.
Yeah, you'd have to coach me though.
No, you did this in college.
I wrote it down. You got time to think about it when you're writing it down. When you're just talking, it's like,
yeah.
No, I'm going to say something stupid if I do that. Like I haven't.
Well, that's my life, Neal.
Saying stupid things.
I've been saying stupid things.
Yeah.
For a lot of years.
So you're
I thank you for your time, Neal.
You're playing at the Grape Life. You're playing at the Grape Life tomorrow night, right?
Yes, I am with Kathy Caparula from 8 to 10.
Kathy.
And we'll do a little mix of jazz and some 70s and 80s pop music or whatever you want. Yeah, I never know. Do you call it pop or because it's not necessarily rock and
Yeah, what's wrong? If it's popular, it's pop music, right?
Yeah, I guess
Regardless,
it's always rough with the genre thing, because somebody will say, "Oh, that's not my style," but then if they heard it, they'd say, "Oh, that I do like that,"
Yeah, I don't like to categorize it.
Yeah,
some
once
of the
you
best
put
music
on it.
Some of the best music defies category anyway.
Yeah, but we'll be there from 8 to 10. I think you have to call ahead of time during this pandemic time to because they can only see.
Live stream.
If everything goes right, Neal.
I can relate. I feel your techno pain.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I struggle with the same things.
If everything goes all right.
I try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, so that doesn't happen as often, unless I'm left to my own, and then it happens all the time.
If I'm not live streaming tomorrow, you know that something went wrong.
Just blame it on the bossa nova, Troy. That's what
I will.
Yeah,
I will blame it on the bossa nova. That's a good place to blame it.
The bossa nova can take it. It's strong enough to bear that burden.
It's taken a lot through the years. Which is a whole nother, again, topic that we could.
Oh yeah, bossa nova. Troy and Neal discuss the bossa nova and how to blame it.
Yes, the pure. What happened to the pure bossa nova?
Yeah. You think people would want to blame the twist before the bossa nova?
Yeah.
Because the bossa nova has endured and the twist has not.
See, now I'll say something like a trivia here that probably you and I know, but most people won't know. Maybe other musicians won't know. But like the Girl from Ipanema, which is kind of a quote unquote joke amongst musicians years later now.
It's a cliche, yeah.
Yeah. It's always in the key of F, but wasn't it originally in the key of D flat?
I've always wondered about that too. The standard key is not the key that it's best known for having been recorded in.
Yeah.
That is weird.
Mm-hmm.
I have to explain that to students because I ask. Like, if you're a tenor player, you need to know this. You know, get in the elevator and learn the tune.
Because somebody might ask you to do it in D flat.
Oh, it's an F. Well, yeah, Stan Getz didn't record it in F.
Yeah, and I've never played it in anything but F. But I know it's not in, originally in F. I know it should be D flat.
It would be interesting to find out how that happened.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a good doctorate thesis for somebody.
Yeah. Or it could be a tease. It could be a tease for some other thing that you and I could do together.
Conspiracy theories?
Yeah.
Bossa Nova conspiracy theories.
Yeah. How did Girl from Ipanema go from F to D flat?
We uncover the
Tune
truth.
in tomorrow.
You won't believe what we found. It's like one of those thumbnails. I was like, should I click on this? I don't know. The shocking details.
Yes.
Which one of these people served prison time because they discovered the truth? That was one of those things like Dorothy Kilgallen was on the trail of the truth behind Girl from Ipanema, and she showed up, she died under mysterious circumstances. Intrepid reporter Dorothy Kilgallen is murdered because she got too close to the truth about Girl from Ipanema.
Yeah.
Poor Dorothy.
F to D flat, for some reason it happened.
Yeah.
Or D flat to F.
Who did? Somebody made that choice.
Yep. And now it's what it is. Now it's always an F. Well, Neal, I will let you go. I've kept you way longer than I said I would keep you.
Oh. I talk too much. That's what you're saying. That's your very polite. You're very polite, Troy. That's your very polite way of saying is Neal rambles. It's okay.
No, because I enjoyed every minute of it. I don't know if anybody else is out there watching.
There was that 1 minute where you weren't really enjoying that. Remember that 1 minute? Remember that one?
Not that one.
Yeah.
Not 1 minute. Not 1 minute of it.
Loving every minute.
Because I'm always fascinated.
Hey Troy. Hey Troy.
I did it in a minute.
Name the artist. Loving every minute of it.
I can't.
Do you know the song? You've heard of it though, right?
I'm not sure.
It was a radio hit. Probably it was Loverboy. It was their last hurrah on the album that did them in. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they were trying to be new wave or punk or something, and it just didn't do them justice.
I was with them, not literally with them, but
working for the weekend.
working for the weekend when it's over. And then they kind of lost me with Almost Paradise. Well, Mike Reno lost
Turn
me.
Me Loose.
Turn Me Loose was on the debut album. Yeah. So you know how I feel about those rock ballads.
Yeah, I do. I do.
And so when Almost Paradise came, that was the end of my Lover Boy.
Yeah, that was not a good era. Eric Carmen, it didn't bring out the best in him either.
Yeah, and he's actually talented too.
I
like
know.
early Eric Carmen.
Get me started on the Raspberries.
Yeah.
Now, if I had known what Go All the Way was really about,
exactly. I knew. Yes,
I would not have allowed myself to listen to it. Never knew how complete love could be. Man, what a great song, though.
Yeah, great chord changes, very good power pop.
Everything about that song. That song is flawless.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the range on that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, see, and there could be another show there, Neal, is the whole thing of when you're older and then you understand the lyrics and you go, wait a second, what was I listening to as a 10-year-old?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did mom and dad know what these lyrics were?
I used to be afraid of the song Hold Your Head Up by Argent because of the instrumentation and everything. It's like, doom, 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 doom. I thought, man, this is dangerous. And that song could not be more positive and affirming. When they laugh, what are the lyrics? But it's about when people are laughing at you. It's like, don't let them see that it's getting to you. Hold your head up. And it's like, I could have used that information, could have used it, and I wasn't listening to the lyrics, just listening to the menacing instrument, like Russ Ballard organ solo and everything. It's like, wow, this is scary. I mean, I love the song, but it's like, this is spooky.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, Troy. I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Neal. Yeah, those lyrics could have worked for a junior high Neal in a school band in high school.
Yeah. At least Rod Argent was on my side.
Yeah. And if you have him on your side, who else do you need?
Colin Blunstone. Exactly. Nobody knows what we're talking about anymore, Troy. We're on our own. They've all tuned out. It's like,
we've lost them again. They're like, oh, there they go again. This is where my dad goes, only you and Neal know what you're talking about.
Everybody's glazing over, taking naps. Wake me up when they mention Bob Marley.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time, Neal.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks for considering me as a worthy subject.
Oh, no, of course you are, Neal.
You're swell.
Thank you so much.